Dear students, let us continue on our module 5, Input and Interaction. Today we will learn some of the programming event-driven inputs and how to create a menu and how to implement this as in a program. One example we are going to see. The first one, in the programming event-driven input, we are going to develop the event-driven inputs by making use of a simple examples. These will be making use of the callback mechanisms. The callback mechanisms already we have discussed previously. We are going to examine various events that will be recognized by the Windows system, and for our application we can write several callback functions which are going to control how the application program will be responding to these event-driven inputs. First one is the mouse function. So the mouse function, this is a callback function. It will be used whenever we want to make use of the mouse keys inside my program. That means the mouse buttons can be used as an input to control the flow of the program. So in that case I can make use of a programming event-driven input, that is the mouse function. So we know the format of the mouse function. It will be having 4 inputs, 4 parameters. So button, state, X and Y. The button can be the mouse button and the state is whether it is pressed or released. X and Y indicates whether the mouse is present or the mouse cursor is present within the current window. Whenever a user is going to press or release a mouse button and this mouse cursor is present within the current window, then the press and the release, it is going to generate a function, and this function is called as the mouse callback. So the button, it can be the left button, it can be the middle button, or it can be the right button. And in OpenGL we are going to have the constants, and these constants are used for each of the buttons here. So for the left button we are going to make use of the glut left button, that is a constant, glut middle button for the middle button of the mouse, and glut right button for the right button of the mouse. So if the mouse is having only 2 buttons, then we will not have the middle button, we will just have the left button and the right button. Suppose my mouse is having only 1 button, then we will just make use of one symbolic constant, that is glut left button. The state of the mouse, it can be either press or release. That means it can be either the button can be up, that is glut up, or it can be glut down. So we make use of the symbolic constants, the glut up and glut down, to indicate the callback functions for the button state up and the button state down, that is button state release and button state pressed. So then the X and Y callback parameters, they are going to indicate that the mouse is present within my relative coordinates, that is in my current working window actual coordinate system, the X and Y positions are present. That means it is a valid position, and these positions will be considered at the instant whenever the mouse button is going to be pressed or released. That means when there is a state of change in the button press, then we are going to record the values of the X and the Y. First programming the event-driven input example is the mouse event. The my mouse is a function here which is having 4 parameters, button, state, X and Y. The my mouse function is defined before the main, because in the main I am going to make use of my glut mouse function to call the my mouse function. So you can have any statements in the my mouse that will be making use of the button, state, X and Y values. So button is for which button I am going to make use of my mouse button. The state is whether the button is pressed or released. X and Y value corresponds to the world coordinate systems row and column value. So we can have any number of statements in the my mouse, and we can also have any number of statements in the main function, but the related API which is connected to the my mouse is the glut mouse function. The second event what we are going to consider is the window event. Whenever we want to implement a window event in the program, we are going to make use of a function called as the reshape. The reshape function is used in a program whenever we are having some change in the window size because of the output of the program. So the reshape function, it is having two parameters, the width and the height, because this is corresponding to the window's width and height. So we are having several APIs within this reshape. All these APIs may not be used in the program, just this is an example. So in this snippet I am having several APIs which are concerned with the viewing. So the first one is the GL viewport. It is having 4 parameters. The first 2 parameters are for the origin of the viewport. That means in my current window, where actually this viewport is situated, that origin is called by the first 2, and it is supposed to be the lower left corner of the viewport. And the third and the fourth parameter talks about its width and height. Then whenever we are having any window event, or whenever we are having any API which will be used for viewing, that is perspective, ortho, frustum, in all these cases it is always a good practice to first go for matrix mode and load identity. The matrix mode, it is we have to first go for the projecting the view. So we have to put this onto the screen, we have to project this onto the screen. That is why we will go for the projection matrix. So we are going to take the help of the identity matrix and then multiply the values present in the GLU perspective. The GLU perspective, it is having 4 parameters. The first one is the field of view, that is the angle what it is made. The angle theta is given in terms of degrees, and within that angle we are going to capture what all objects are present. Second parameter is about the aspect ratio. Third and the fourth are talking about the volumes near and far, that means the range. Within this range only I am going to capture my objects. And GL matrix mode, whenever you want to go for viewing, final viewing, then we should go for changing this to the GL model view. And of course whenever you are making use of the GLU lookat or GLU perspective, GLU frustum, GLU ortho, you should make use of the GL load identity, so that whatever the previous values were there, that will not disturb your present value. So GLU lookat is an API in which you will be having 3 sets of XYZ values. The first set of XYZ are corresponding to the eye's position, that means where your eye is located in that viewing frustum, in the viewing perspective, where it is located, that is given in terms of X, Y and Z. So you can see that your eye is located in the positive Z direction with 5 as the unit value. Then where you are looking at, that is given by 0, 0, 0. That means you are looking at the origin. Your eye is looking at the point, at one particular point, and that is the origin. And in which angle or in which direction or in which inclination your eye is looking, that is given in the third set of XYZ. That means we are looking from the Y value as 1, whereas the X and Z is equal to 0. So the eye is placed at a position and it is looking up at from the Y direction towards the origin. That is the meaning of the GLU lookat. So the window event, it will cover the reshape function. The reshape function is nothing but it is talking about whenever there is some modification in your output window, the window has to be adjusted to the actual window what is present on your monitor. To do this adjustment, we should make use of the reshape function. These are some of the reshape possibilities. That means a window which is a square window, it can be now converted to a rectangular window where your object can be moved to the left, or it can be made as a flat, or some of the objects can be go missing also. So these are some of the possibilities. Our aim is whatever is present in the original, as far as possible we should be able to recreate that same object, but without any loss of the object, how it has to be seen, or the object view inside the window, how it has to be there. It should be maintained in the output also. Whatever you want to put onto the window, information should not be lost. The information should be present within my window. So we have to try to make this possible. Of course, when you make use of a reshape function, it will naturally adjust to the input what you are giving, and there will be no loss of information. So next event is the keyboard event. A computer will be having a keyboard, and the keyboard will be consisting of several keys. We can make use of these keys to control the direction of the program. To do that, we can make use of a function called as the keyboard. This keyboard is consisting of three parameters. The first one is the key, that is the ASCII value of the key, and the next one is the X and Y value. We are using this X and Y value so that to make sure that the X and Y coordinates are valid, that is, it is in my present world coordinate system. This keyboard function, the name is not unique. It need not be keyboard, it can be any other name, because this is not system defined, it is only user defined. So it is not OpenGL defined also. You can give the name as different also. This keyboard should be called from the main function. In the main function, we should have an API called as the glut keyboard function. The glut keyboard function is fixed. This is an API. So inside this API, you can place a function, and this function has to support the keyboard's attributes. So when we write a function like this, where the keyboard has been defined already and it has been called from the main function, then you can write within the keyboard the definition. That means you can make use of the key, you can make use of the X and Y values to write a code and to appropriately give the input to the program, and also interactively take the output also. So the keyboard will be having the definition where you are going to make use of the key and the X and the Y value. The display callback is another event. It is executed whenever the window will be refreshed. That means whenever the window is opened, whenever the window is reshaped, when a window is made foreground or a background window, the main window or the sub window, or whenever the user will be deciding that the display will be changing. So the display callback function, it will be made use of in the main function. The display has to be first only defined, and the display, the my display, it will be called from the main function. In the main function, we will have an API called as the glut display function. Glut display function will call my display. It is going to call a function called as my display, in which the definition will be there, and this definition may correspond to a window opening, a window reshaping, a window being a foreground or a background, or any other thing what you want to change in the program. So in the display, if you want to change anything, that should be included in my display. Usually in the OpenGL programming, our my display program will be consisting of the drawings, or what all we want to put that onto the monitor. Usually those statements will be present in the my display, and it is compulsory. Every glut program should have a display callback. You may not have the keyboard, you may not have the mouse, but a display is compulsory, like the main. You will have the main function, you will also have the display function. So this is the main point what you have to remember. The display callback is compulsory in any OpenGL program. Because the display is having a wide range of application, it can be used for the window start or window foreground or the background, or to display some content onto the monitor. So it is having multiple purpose. Many events can invoke the display callback function, so which will lead to multiple executions of the display callback, and this will lead to an event where it will be having infinite loop. So instead of going for multiple invocations, what we can do is we can just call this once by making use of the glut post redisplay. The glut post redisplay is an API, so it will be called or it will be executed whenever there is some change in the display. It is related to the output on the screen or the window. Whenever there is some change, this will be executed. So how this is executed? It takes the help of a flag and sees whether it is set or reset at the end of the event loop. If it is set, then the function will be executed. If it is reset, it won't be executed. So by making use of this one at the end, usually you will see whenever you are having any display function, in the display the last statement will be the glut post redisplay. So the glut post redisplay is an API which will be used at the end of the display callback function to support the display whenever there is a change in the display. That means whenever there is a change in the output to be displayed or the window to be modified, in that cases we should make use of the glut post redisplay. If you don't use the glut post redisplay, your display won't be good. That means instead of calling it multiple times, we can just call it as once. Or else if you go for calling it multiple times, there may be some confusions and we should keep track of how actually it is working. But that can be removed when you go for the glut post redisplay. Whenever we are having some animation, that means whenever there is some movement, suppose we are having some objects rotating, a cube rotation, a line drawn continuously, or a torus or a sphere rotating continuously, spinning, something happening, movement is happening. In all the places, the display buffer should clear the previous window and then go for altering the display. Every time there is a change, it should be seen. But the problem here is we are going to mix up this information with the frame buffer, that is the contents of the memory. Because the memory is nothing but it is part of the graphic system here, we should not corrupt it. So what we are going to do, we are going to make use of an extra buffer. That means the frame buffer will be having the front buffer and the back buffer. We are going to make use of two buffers for transmitting the information for animation. So at this juncture, I would like to tell you that in the textbook Edward Angel, in the last we are having several sections. The appendix A is there, in which the complete programs, whatever has been done in the textbook. That means in the textbook when we are reading, it is in bits and parts. But when you go to the appendix A, it is complete. Every program has been written completely. You can just have a look at this and it will help you a lot whenever you are going for designing a project or for your examination. Okay, so this particular example, it is taken from single double dot C. Because everywhere we can't explain the complete program, we are just taking the partial snippets and we are trying to explain what is actually happening here. But the complete program is present in your appendix A. Please go to that section and look at all the programs leisurely. So in the double buffering, we will be having two buffers, that is the front buffer and the back buffer. So the front buffer is which is displayed and the back buffer is onto which we are going to write. So these two buffers will be acting simultaneously in the background so that we are going to get the animation. So whenever we are requesting for a double buffer in the program, you will make use of an API called as glut init display mode, in which you are going to mention a symbolic constant glut double. So when you use this glut double, it is an indication to the program that in this program I have animation, so I need two buffers. That is why I am going to make use of my glut double. So whenever you are having the display callback, there we will make use of the glut swap buffers at the end of the display function. This is another thing. So whenever you are having animation, you will have two things. That is, the glut double will be specified in your glut init display mode, and also you will be having the glut swap buffers API at the end of the my display function. Only when you have these two, then the program will be able to give you the animation effect. It will make use of two buffers and it is going to swap them. The meaning of the swap buffers is exchange. So the front buffer and the back buffer, they are going to work together. One is going to display and one is going to write. One is going to write and it's going to be displayed. In this way you are going to get the output. This is one simple technique for terminating a program. You must have seen in my OpenGL program what we are going to do. We are not having any exit functions at all, is it not? So we can go for a exit function whenever you are having some constraint. For example, in this case I have taken the mouse callback event, and whenever the button is the right button and it has been pressed down, in that case I want to exit my program. You can write a code like this so that the control will come outside your program. We can make use of the mouse for several other purposes other than pointing. Suppose I want to draw a square at the position where my mouse is, and when my left mouse button is clicked, we can do that by making use of the program what I am going to explain now. So this example over here, we will be making use of multiple other functions which are not present here, but when you integrate everything together, then only you are going to get the output. So the my display function will be made use of over here. Of course, in every program my display has to be present. Here we are having two functions. First one is the my mouse and second one is the draw square. In the my mouse function, we are checking if the button is equal to glut right button and the state is glut down, then exit the program. Or if the button is equal to glut left button and the state is equal to glut down, then you draw the square. So draw the square with x and y value. This x and y will be got at the position where the mouse is pointing to. Wherever the mouse is present, that x and y is captured and it is sent to a function called as draw square. And in the draw square, we can see that we can go for drawing a square by making use of 4 points here. We should make use of an array, and we have to make use of a point to another function over here, which will take the values of the x and y, add it with the size and store it in an array. Of course, no drawing is going to happen until unless you don't have the my display with the vertex and GL draw or GL points, whatever it is. If we are going to draw only, the point is going to appear, else the picture will not appear. This program is just to give an idea. The snippet is just to give an idea how actually you can go for drawing a square by making use of the x and y coordinates of a mouse. So whenever we are using a draw square, a square will be drawn. We should call the display function, and in the display this drawing is going to be done. This is an interesting example where we can draw a square as long as the mouse button is pressed by making use of a function called as glut motion function. So when you use this glut motion function, that means whenever the mouse is in motion, whenever the mouse is moving, then we can go for drawing a square. So the draw square function, like in the previous slide, it will make use of a array to store the parameters for drawing a square. So this function, it is called with the x and y location of the mouse. So wherever the mouse is pointing to, at that place itself we can get a square. So this can be used for animations, or you can go for creating a special effect by making use of this motion callback API. Another way how we can draw a square by making use of the draw square function is by using another API called as glut passive motion function. Passive motion means we know that the mouse will be moving but there won't be any key pressed. So in that case also we can go for drawing a square. So the magnitude of the motion, it will depend upon the system what you are using. If the system is very sensitive, then the magnitude will be high, or else it will be low. It depends upon the system what you are using. Now we will see how we can create a menu. Menu is very important whenever you are going for a big program, because by using the menu you can go for selecting different shapes, different colors, or performing different actions. So we have to understand how we can go for creating a menu. That means you are having a screen. You can look at the screen here. In that you are having one picture and a menu associated. So when you click the button, it may be the left button, right button, or the middle button. When you click a button, then a menu will appear. So you are going to write a code for creating a menu like this. Suppose in the menu I am having 4 choices: saving the image, draw pixels, flip pixels, or zoom pixels. You can see here we are having several APIs: the create menu, add menu, attach menu. So we are going to study each of this, and we are going to see one example to create a menu. The menu can be a single individual menu, or it can be hierarchical menu. That means you can have a menu inside a menu. That is called as a hierarchical menu. So you can look at a hierarchical menu over here. We are having, in the first menu we are having 3 things, that is option A and sub menu. The sub menu is having an arrow mark. That means it is having some more things. What is that one? That is option B and option C, and it is also having sub menu. The sub menu too, it is having an arrow mark which is indicating the other option. So you can see here sub menu is leading to one menu, sub menu 2 is leading to another menu. So we are having totally here 3 menus. That is the first one, the main menu, second one is a sub menu 1, and the third one is a sub menu 2. So you can go for creating either a single menu or a hierarchical menu by making use of the APIs which are concerned with the menu. The glut supports multiple types of menus. It can be a simple menu or it can be a hierarchical menu. So the first API which is used in the creation of the menu is glut create menu. This is going to return an integer, that is the name or the ID for the menu, and it is going to accept one value. It can be integer value. Based on that integer value, I am going to decide what the action has to be performed. So glut create menu is going to return one integer, and it is also accepting one integer as a parameter. So parameter what is being accepted, on that we are going to write the code, and we are going to decide the direction of the program. And the integer what it is being returned here, it is the menu ID. That means this particular ID number will be returned back. So this glut create menu, it is going to define the callback whenever the menu item has been selected. So it is having one parameter, that is the value. That means based on that value what action has to be performed, that value we are going to take, and then it is going to return an integer which is the identifier. This identifier is required whenever you want to identify that particular menu, so that you can attach that menu as submenu to another menu. So we have the glut add menu entry. So this API, it is going to add an entry to the menu with the label what has been defined by the name and the value what has been defined as a parameter. It will be passed to the callback functions. So this menu will be added to the current menu. Each menu what we are going to add, it will be added at the bottom of the current menu. First the current menu will be there and the current menu will be having its submenu as the next menu. The glut add submenu, it is having two parameters, that is the name and menu. So this glut add submenu, it is going to add the menu, that means whatever we are having the number here, the integer menu, that menu will be added as the submenu, and this will also be given a name by given whatever the name we have specified here, that name will be associated with it. So it is part of the same menu. So we have two things here, that is the name and the menu. So the menu is the number and name is the name of that particular choice. So we can include the submenus by making use of this glut add submenu. So if I am having menus which are infinite, the program won't work. So we should ensure that whatever the menu we are writing, it should be systematic, it should be hierarchical, there should be a point of start and there should be a point of ending for that menu. Okay, some more points on menu. The create menu, it is going to allow us to create the menu and also the submenu. So first will be the create menu. In the create menu function, the glut create menu is called for creation of each of the submenus. So this each of the submenu, it will be having some value which will be passed to the callback functions. Next we have to add the submenus, and to the submenus we have to add the entries by making use of the name and the identifier. This will be passed to the create menu with the identifier and the name. For every menu we will have a separate glut add menu entry function, so which will be used for calling that particular function by making use of the unique identifiers. So these unique identifiers are the ones which will be used for calling a specific menu. So this will be done by using the glut add menu entry. So this is the flow. First we'll create the menu, then the submenus, and everything will be having a number, and this number will be associated with the actions, and I am going to call that menu with respect to the number. Suppose if I am having a menu which is having duplicate name, so we should not have that, there will be some error. So whenever we are having a glut add submenu, it is going to create a submenu inside my main menu. It is going to work as the same way as the glut add menu entry function. That will also be having a main menu and the submenu. So what we have to do, we have to set different colors for each of these menus, so that whenever you are going for a display, easily you can make out which is the menu over here, which is a menu, which is a submenu, from which I am calling which another menu. All this you can find out by the color variations. We can go for attaching a mouse function to the menu by using glut attach menu and by making use of the button. So the current menu what is there, to that I can go for attaching a mouse event. So the buttons on the mouse what are there, depending upon that you can choose whether you want to perform the action when the left button is pressed, when the middle button is pressed, or when the right button is pressed. Based on that you can go for attaching a mouse button to your menu. So when you press that, some action has to be performed. That can be done by making use of the glut attach menu. So if you want to disconnect the menu, you can go for the opposite API, that is the glut detach menu. Now we will see an example program to know how the menu creation and the menu will be associated with the mouse, and how actually the total program is going to work. So we are going to make use of the header files. In this case, because we are using the window coordinate system also, so we are going to make use of the windows, and then I'm going to have some variables, the window, menu ID, sub menu ID, and I'm taking one variable called as value, which is equal to 0. So initially I have one function here. This function is void menu. This void menu, this is having a testing condition. What does that one means? If the number what is being given over here, if it is equal to 0, that means I am not interested in creating any menu, or else I should go for creating a menu by using the number num. That will be taken as a value. So this is the starting point. I am going to call a function called as menu, which will be setting the condition for closing the window or continuing, depending upon the value what I am giving here, num. And this num is copied to value, or else if it is equal to 0, we are going to close the window. This is the core of your menu program. This is the create menu function. You can see here we are having glut create menu. This glut create menu, it is going to create a menu, and that menu's ID is given to submenu ID. This submenu ID is used later on to create submenu. So first the main menu will be created. Actually, when you are writing the program, you will be seeing that the glut create menu is of course the main menu, but in this case you will be having, first you have to write the inner menu. That means whatever the menu is there within the main, that has to be the sub menu, has to be written here first. So you can see here I am going to create one menu and make an ID, and to the sub menu I am going to add menu entry as 2, 3, 4 and 5. I want to display a sphere, cone and torus and teapot, so I am going to write their description, that is sphere, cone, torus and teapot. 4 choices I am having here. So those are made as menus. It can be menu 1, menu 2, menu 3 or menu 4. Then we are going to have one more glut create menu, and this menu ID what is there, this will be different from what has been done in the previous case. We will have one more ID. This you may use or you may not use. If you are using, you can create some more hierarchical menus. So, but the number will be stored in your menu ID. For the glut create menu with the menu ID number, now I am going to add my options, that is add menu entry, that is clear, draw and quit. And in the second one, that means when I want to create a sub menu, you can see here I am using an API called as glut add sub menu. That means for this choice draw, I want one menu. So in this case what is going to happen, first one is the main menu is the clear, draw and quit, and the draw is having another submenu. The draw submenu contents are the sphere, cone, torus and teapot. So we can look at the arrangement of the APIs here. We are having two menus, that is submenu ID and menu ID. The submenu ID is used in your draw. This draw is submenu. So totally we are having two menus here, and in the first one we are having three options, that is clear, draw and quit, and the submenu ID, it is having 4 choices, and every choice will also be given a number here, so that the action what has to be performed, it will be written with respect to that number. In this function we are going to create a sphere, wired sphere. That means it will be a skeleton of the sphere. It is having 3 parameters, radius, the slices and the stacks. So the sphere will be having number of, what is the radius, that is given by r here, and what is the horizontal and the vertical fillings what we have, those are called as the slices and the stacks. So by making use of this, we are going to complete the sphere. So the push matrix and the pop matrix will be used whenever we are having some value, so that value should not be changed. So the previous value what all was there, that will be stored onto the stack, and then we come for the changes in the object. After this has been done, again we are going to restore the values of the program. In the program, whatever the important attributes were there, that we are going to put them onto the stack. In this part, we are going to create a wire cone and the wire torus. The wire cone will be having the base and the height and the number of stacks and slices. So we will have the base, what will be the base radius that we are going to give, and what will be the height and the number of vertical and the horizontal divisions, that is given in terms of slices and stacks. So wire torus means it is like a tire, inner circle and the outer circle. So it should have, first one is the inner radius, second one is the outer radius, then we have number of sides and number of rings. That means if the sides are more, it will look like a circle. If the sides are less, means it will look like a hexagon or a pentagon shape. So if the number of sides, if you increase, means it will become like a circle. Small sides will be there, and all this put together it would look like a circle if you go for large number. So in this case we have taken this to be as a 100, and the rings also 100. It means the small circles what we have, that is also taken to be as the rings. That means to make up a torus, in this case we are taking a skeletal view. For the skeletal view we are going to consider these parameters. The Glut solid teapot is an API which will be used for creating a teapot. So a ready-made teapot will be available for you when you go for this API, Glut solid teapot. And you can give the value here from 0 to 1. That means you can make the teapot a big one or a small one depending upon the display where you want to put it. So here we have taken the value to be as 0.5. So this is the last function, that is the main. The main is having all APIs here which are concerned with any normal OpenGL program, along with one API, that is the create. Create menu is not API actually, because you can see that it is not starting with the GL, GLUT or GLU. It is a user defined function name. This function name will get connected with the previous slides create menu, where we are going to create a menu and all the entries for submenu and all are made there. So here we are having the output. So first when I click my right button, because in the program we have written after the menu entries, when we are attaching we have written that as Glut right button. So when you click the mouse's right button, you are going to get the first menu, and when you click on the draw, then you are going to get the submenu. So this is the submenu. When the choice is 2, you can get the sphere. When the choice is 3, you can get the cone. When the choice is 4, it is the torus. Choice is 5, that is the teapot, depending upon the value associated with that. Because for us it is very easy to identify with the names, but for the system we have to use the numbers. So the sphere is 2, cone is 3, torus is 4, and the teapot is 5. When the choice is 2, then I am going to get the sphere. So the sphere will be having 3 things. What is that one? Radius, slices and stacks. So you can see here the horizontal direction cuts and the vertical direction cuts, that is the slices and the stacks. And then the radius will also be given here. Here the choice is 2. So this is another stage of the output. When the choice is 5, you are having the teapot. This is when you are having the choice as the cone. So the cone will be having the base radius, the height and the stacks and the slices. the horizontal and the vertical cuts. This is the torus. The torus will be having 4 things: the inner radius, the outer radius, and then the stacks and the slices. That is the horizontal and the vertical cuts. So this is when you are going to give the choice as the torus. In the draw you can go for any of the 4 shapes. So when it is torus, you are going to get this output. Of course the color and everything, it is given in the respective function for the torus. So in today's class we have seen some of the programming event driven inputs and also how to create a menu. So creating a menu is very significant. Please practice this and be thorough with this so that you can do your programs as well as the project well. So we'll close today's class over here and we'll continue in the next class. Thank you.